Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Computer Information Systems. I hope you all had a good weekend, and we're going to pick up where we left off with Excel Activity 13. And this will be the next installment, so what we're going to do is we're going to change the name of this, File, Save As, and we are going to save this as Excel Activity 14. I have it .example, but you can use your own initials. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to save that new file. Wait a moment. Oh, it moved me over for some reason. Here we go. All right, so just to wrap up, you guys, your challenge was to create data validation for these three columns. Okay, and here you can see I have my list of two class codes, and here I have a list of different tests that are available. Now, I can do these basically the same way, but I just wanted to show you the alternate way of validating is to create a list somewhere on your spreadsheet. Okay, and so that's what's creating my list here. I've got my three options of what I can use for a test in my drop-down menu. Those are based on this. So if I did miscellaneous MOS Excel, I would now see on my drop-down menu that this changed to Excel. Okay. All right. And here I have my results as either pass or fail, and they're capitalized just to make sure that it is consistent all the way down. Okay. Now, if I am using a column over here that helps populate these, a lot of times what's a good thing to do is to remember which column it's in and actually hide that information. This is going to prevent people from accidentally changing, those drop-down options like I just did. Okay, you might want to prevent other users from accidentally changing your fill-in information. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to right-click on the N here, whatever column I have that information in. I'm going to right-click and I'm going to hide it, so that it is still there. You see we have M skips to O, so that information has not been deleted. It's still there, and I can reveal it this way. Okay, but what I did is I hid it from view as a way to protect it. Okay. The next thing that we're going to do is something that is really useful with long lists like this. And we're going to find a way where we can actually pick out pieces of information in a very kind of clear manner for people. We're going to use what's called VLOOKUP. Okay, so the way we're going to set this up, we're just going to create kind of an example here. So I want to be able to look up students by their last name, and I want to be able to tell what their student ID is, just kind of at the click of a button, right? Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a little bit of setup. Over on the right hand side, I'm going to create an area. We're going to go from and cell K8. I am going to put in student lookup. In K9 then, I'm going to put in last name. And to the right of that, in L9, I'm going to put STI number. Okay. And so I'm going to actually merge this together. So we're going to create like a little mini table right here. Let's merge and center this. And I want to give plenty of space for people to type out a name. And then when they return, when they type in that name, I'm going to return a student ID number for them. Okay? So they're going to put in a name here, and I'm going to look up their number instantly. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of add a little bit of formatting here to make this look nice. Well, let's get to that later. Okay, we're going to focus on the actual function itself, because this is a little tricky, but it's also one that gets used very commonly with spreadsheets, and this is called VLOOKUP. So I'm now in L10, directly underneath where it says STI number, and I'm going to start my function using the equal sign. I'm going to start typing in VLOOKUP. All right, this is an example of an advanced function. It has more than one argument, and it does take specialized information to understand how to make it work correctly. You're going to take instruction from me. This is going to be an example, but it also is a good example of something that's commonly used and that shows some of the power of functions above and beyond just simple like math. Okay, we can use functions to do math things like the PMT function. We can also use the function for logical statements like the if function, and we can use the functions in other ways. They have other abilities, and so this is another example for the VLOOKUP. All right, so the first thing is it's asking me in my first argument, what is the value that it wants me to that I want to look up? Well, what I want to look up is whatever my user types in this cell, K10. Okay, they're going to type the name, and it's going to use that name to kind of look up the STI number. Right now that cell is blank, which is why I need to make sure I put in K10 and I don't put in some other information there. I'm done with that argument, so I press the comma button. That's going to move me to the next argument. Okay? All right, so the next argument is the table array. The table array, so you think of think of the word array as like a range or a list. Okay? And right now I want to know like what area do I want to be looking in for the information I'm looking. Okay? So for this example, we're going to go and we're going to click on the A at the top of the column because we don't know how big this table is going to get. We might be adding names later. And so by clicking up here, we are saying from A1 to forever. However long this list goes, that's where I want you to look. I'm also going to click and drag to the right so that I'm also highlighting columns B and C. Now, we're not actually going to be using B for this example, but we need to show like a continuous list of columns for the VLOOKUP. I could go all the way across, but we just don't need to, so I'm going to keep it simple. I'm highlighting A, B, and C. And you can see how that looks here. A:C. All of A, all of B, and all of C. That's my table array. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to press comma. And this is the column index number. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to count, like, what is the return value? Okay, what am I looking up? I'm looking up STI numbers. That's what I want my cell to display. Okay, so if I want my cell to display these numbers here, I have to basically count from the beginning of my array. So if I've got A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3. So the column index number is 3, right? 1, 2, 3. All right. The last thing that I'm going to check is whether or not I need, I want to look for an exact match. This is an optional field, but I think that it makes it work correctly. So we're going to put in, let me see, false. That one's a little bit more kind of complex to explain. You can look through the VLOOKUP information, and I'll show you that in just a second. But we're just going to put that as false. So here's our equals VLOOKUP. That's our function name. We open our parentheses. We got our first argument, which is, what do you want me to look up? I want you to look up whatever the last name someone types in here. Where do you want me to look? I want you to look in columns A through C, A, B, and C. So it's going to look for that name, and then what are you going to tell me, what are you going to put into the cell? What are you actually going to display? I want you to display whatever you find in the third column of that information. Okay? We're going to press enter. Right now it says NA, so nothing appears. Well, that's because we don't have anything in this cell over here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put in an example name. Careful about the spelling. When I tap enter, here I see that I instantly have the STI number. Okay, I could go and do another one. Let's see, Bates. And I can see that it instantly changes. And so I am looking up the STI number of whatever a person types over in this left side. Okay? All right. So let's look really closely just for a moment. Okay, so double clicking, I show the function. When I click in the argument section, I get this helper tool. So I'm going to click on this little hyperlinked VLOOKUP. And here I'm going to see that this is the literature that tells me how to make that function work. Now, this is it's TLDR unless you're really interested. And, I do think that it's worth kind of getting used to looking at this kind of documentation, for your professional life. We have a help task that tells us exactly how to fill in those different pieces of information. Here, this tells me about, you can specify true, so where we did true, false. True if you want the approximate match, or false if you want an exact match. So if I did true, it might look at things that are close to the spelling, so I could do that in case people, mistype. But maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe I only want to make sure we chose false so that they have to spell the person's name correctly before it'll show their STI number. Okay. There's videos in here. There's visual examples. So these help tools actually do help a lot. I'm going to close that out. And we're going to wrap up with applying just a little bit of formatting here. So a lot of times dark backgrounds mean something that I don't want you really to change. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to apply this kind of dark green color. I'm going to go very dark. And I'm going to apply a white text. Maybe we'll bold it so that it stands out really good. Okay? Up here, I'm going to put on a lighter color, lighter green color with a border around it. I'm going to make that border color match. So I'm going to give it a dark green color. And then once I have the color displayed, here, I'm going to click outside border. Okay. This is the area where I want somebody to actually put in some information. So I am going to give that also the same border, and I am going to give it a bright yellow kind of highlight. So that's where I want my user to write in information. And then once that happens, I'm going to give my output, and I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to give that kind of like a light gray with that same kind of green border. Okay, so my user is going to put in information here, and I am going to display the STI number based on that function here. Okay, do your best to represent that. Oh, that looks ugly. There we go. That's better. Okay, so here's my little lookup tool, and I'm out.